I will never defend the men who make amends when the enemy's friends. I will never pretend. Good day, Voluntary Virtues Network. Today is September 28th, I believe. It is 5 o'clock, doing the show on a different time today because I'm joined by the Dollar Vigilante himself, Mr. Jeff Berwick. Jeff, how you doing today?
Hey, how are you?
Doing pretty good myself. Thanks for being on, this being my first major interview on this network and all, so it seems pretty cool for a change. And we have a few things that we're going to try and discuss here. Jeff, are you currently in Mexico right now, or what's up with that?
Yeah, I'm in Acapulco, Mexico.
Acapulco, Mexico. I have some interesting questions about that. We're also going to try and talk a little bit about those recent controversies with Gulch, because been hearing an awful lot about that, and a little more than I'd prefer to hear. So, really, I hope you don't mind, but I'm just going to sort of cut to the chase. Oh, did we lose Jeff? Is he still there on the line? What's going on there? Anyways, but yeah, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the whole Gulch controversy at all, but there's been a big mess of things that have been going on there, and we're going to try and get to the bottom of it. So here, I think he just disconnected there, so we're going to try and get him back on shortly. But I'm not sure if you've been keeping up with it all. There's a lot of basically the problem, the crony capitalism, it seems, has taken its way down the Gulch with someone who worked down there with Jeff, and Jeff is basically going to try and explain what's going on with that situation, because what really inspired this episode was I was in one of my classes the other day and discussing. I brought up kind of the free market with that teacher in that class, and he ended up saying how Gulch is now evidence that libertarian ideas don't work practically. And I felt very disappointed with that because, you know, I didn't really know what to say. To be honest, I hadn't really read any of the articles that I saw popping up on my news feed about this. So I was rather unfamiliar with the situation. And in my research, I found this to be a very complex situation that even people on the left are trying to pass off as something like, I really don't know. They're really blowing it a lot more out of proportion than it needs to be. But at the same time, there is a really interesting story here. And we're still having trouble getting on with Jeff. I don't know what's going on there. So here, we're going to see if we need to send out another invite or something. But until then, I might as well bring this up too. But yeah, he's having trouble getting back on. But recently, the U.S. has started bombing in Raqqa in Syria. So my big question for this is the U.S. going to use this as an excuse to go in and start bombing Assad's regime? But I will try and get to that on a later date because Mr. Jeff Berwick is back on us now.
Hey, sorry about that. I think I had 50 tabs open. I don't think that was working very well, so I closed them all down now.
Hey, it's cool. We've all gotten into those moods. We're having like all those tabs open, just intense into what you're reading. So I'm just gonna cut to the chase if you don't mind. But let's start off small for some of those who might be a little unfamiliar with the situation. What is Gulch, and what is the overall goal of it?
Well, Gulch started about 2 years ago. Around this time 2 years ago, I was looking to start a real estate development for libertarian-minded people, and one of the countries I was really interested in was Chile, because at the time, especially, they had quite a libertarian-leaning government. The president's brothers, a big Ayn Rand fan. A lot of the Chilean central bank people are all Chicago School of Economics people, so they're a lot better than Keynesians. They're not perfect, they're not Austrians, but they're a lot better. And then I met a person, unfortunately, named Ken Johnson, and we partnered, and I went down, looked at the land that he had sort of found through another person named John Coben, and it looked amazing. And we started to put it together, and the plan was just to for me and Ken Johnson to be partners 50-50 on the project, and we'd get this land through another person, and they actually would have been partners at one point, but that didn't work out for whatever reason. And then there was just so much interest, and money started just to come in, and we raised a fair amount right off the bat with 4 original founders. And then there was some problems. We were told by everybody, including our own lawyers, that this first parcel of land that we had bought with this money didn't have water rights. It couldn't be rezoned. But they told us that when I was actually there in the lawyer's office when we were signing, and I asked them right before we signed. I said, "Okay, so you're saying that we can rezone it, and it does have water rights?" And they said yes. And then about a few weeks later, they said, "No, sorry, you don't have any of that." So then we just kept working, and Ken Johnson found a new piece of land, which is actually much better, and right in the same area, and started to bring in interest for that, and it went really well. The amount of interest was huge, but right around that time, after we had brought in quite a bit of people investing and wanting to buy, Ken Johnson sort of started to cut me out of everything, and I really had no control of anything at that point, and he had done all sorts of what I consider to be very fraudulent things with me and with other people to make it so he has full control of the company that he actually didn't put any money into, and other people put money into. And then he kind of convinced a lot of people that I was the problem, because I was asking questions. I'd say, "What's going on? Do we really have this zoning that you're trying to sell? Do we really have these water rights? Have we tested the water to make sure it's there?" So Ken got really mad. He didn't like me asking all these questions, and he convinced the most of the people involved at that time that I was a problem. And so everyone sort of asked me to step aside for the time being until they can get everything sorted out. They said that because Ken just hates me so much, that it's best if I just sort of stay away from it for a bit and let them organize it. And Ken told them he'll bring them on the board of directors and he'll organize the company properly and all that kind of stuff. And that went on for about 6 months until they realized that he was just playing them, taking them for a ride as well. And that was about May of this year, around May. And all the investors, all the buyers at that point had realized that there was a major problem, and it was just one person who had completely taken control of everything. He wouldn't give anyone access to any information, a very sort of power-hungry sort of person, a control freak sort of person, but way worse than that. And it was around that time that many of us, including Wendy McElroy, pretty much everyone said we have to go public with this, because we can't allow people to get involved with this project until we can get this thing fixed, because it's a mess right now the way the person's running it. And then it was a couple months ago, about a month ago, that Wendy finally went public, and I told everyone involved, I said, so the people who put money into this, the investors or the buyers, have to, at least do something and say, it's your money. I'm not going to go out there and say things, about what you guys are doing unless you guys do it, because I don't even know what's going on, first of all, and secondly, it's your money, and I'm not really involved at that moment in time. So finally, Wendy went live public with a fairly long piece on Daily Bell, and then I finally could speak about it comfortably because I knew I had the support of the investors and buyers at that time to go public, and they actually wanted me to say what's going on so that people are aware. Now, of course, what's happened since in the last month is every single person who hates libertarianism, every media outlet has taken massive swings at us, saying this is what happens when libertarians try to do something, which is totally not the case. In fact, the problem is all this one person who actually isn't a libertarian. He lied and said he was, but now he tells people he hates libertarians. He's a sociopath. He's crazy. He might have major mental illness, as far as I can tell. So yeah, everyone's taking their swings at it, but we're all still here every day working to try to fix it. We just need it to be properly managed. We need to know what the books are. We need to know what the details are of zoning of water rights. And Ken Johnson won't allow anyone to get access to that information. So what we're doing at the moment is just making sure everyone realizes it, so no more money goes into Gulch, and until we can get this rectified, and that's where it stands today.
Yeah, it sounds like your problem is really an element of crony capitalism that has taken over Galts Gulch. And how do you intend on really fixing this? Is what I'm wondering.
Well, the land, as far as we can tell, like we don't get access to any information. But as far as we can tell, we've hired the group has hired a number of lawyers. They've been working on it for months, looking into what's going on, where things are at. As far as we can tell, the land, which is worth about $6 or $7 million, is fully owned by Galts Gulch. So that's good. So this is not a complete everyone loses everything sort of situation. It's just a matter of getting this one person out and managing it properly. And then it actually could go on to do very well, but it needs to be managed properly. So that's generally where it's at, is just trying to get this company run like a real company. The person, Ken Johnson, who's running it, is so incompetent. He's like unbelievably incompetent. He doesn't even know how to run a company. He's gone through like 100 employees, and every single one has either been fired or quit during that time.
It's funny you bring that up, too, because I looked into some of his previous jobs that he worked at, and it really does look like the resume of a scam artist. Like something of like reversing the age process or something. Like there was a lot of really weird things that I saw him selling in the past, and I was just like, how could anyone get behind something like that?
Yeah, I don't know the full details of what he did before, and that's one of my things I did wrong. Was I should have really vetted out any sort of partner I was going to have a lot better than I did, and I didn't do that, unfortunately. I learned a big lesson. What I really learned a lot through this process is partnering with someone in business is almost like a marriage. And so you don't just get married to someone you just met, right? You need to go through a process of figuring out who that person is, seeing if you can really trust them. And I didn't do that. I sort of...
Jeff, are you there? Oh no, are we losing Jeff again? Oh man, that lovely Bright House Monopoly internet connection here. Looks like we're losing Jeff again, so I will try and get him back on. The U.S. has started bombing in Raqqa, and I think that this could be a key opportunity for the U.S. to use this as an excuse to go over after the Assad government for going after the more quote-unquote moderate rebels. And the thing is, when you really look at the situation over there, it's so complex, and the president's own ignorance on it is absolutely amazing. He keeps on referring to the Islamic State of ISIL, even though ISIS, al-Nusra, and ISIL all merged to form the Islamic State not long ago. And let's see, we're trying to get Jeff back on again. But yeah, I feel like this is going to be the forefront they're going to try and use to get into Syria. They're clearly trying to use Iraq as the wedge to get in there right now. But yeah, the Galts Gulch situation, as he was saying, like the left has taken this as an opportunity to really smear libertarians. But the thing is, it's such a complex situation that a lot of those on the left try and make it sound a lot more simple of why it's failed, but really it's not. Dealing with crony capitalism is never really that simple. So I'm still nothing from Jeff's end. But yeah, we're hoping to try and figure out, like, here's one thing that I kind of thought of when reading the Vice article. I don't know if any of you have read the Vice article, Atlas Mugged, about the recent Galts Gulch situation. That's a tongue twister. But basically, let's say there is no state at all. How would you prevent these sort of crony capitalist things coming in a total anarchist world? Now, one could argue that these types of things wouldn't be able to coalesce in a sort of anarchic place. But at the same time, I think it's a little bit more complex than that. I think there's definitely a lot more to be figured out. Here, I'm going to try and send him an invite to the back again. We've been having these tech difficulties for the last few weeks here on the show, if you've been keeping up at all. But here we go. Hoping to get this back on. All All right, he does not know what the problem is, and that's just wonderful. But, I'm sorry, wonderful. Oh, there we go. Is he back on? Yeah, we got Jeff back on. All righty then.
Yeah, sorry, but I don't know what the problem is. That time it said my browser terminated. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, freaking NSA fucking with us, you know what I mean?
Wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that one bit. But where did you leave off? It was...
I was just saying how my biggest mistake through the whole thing was not choosing a proper partner or not being diligent enough in who I worked with. And in my mind, what we were going to do was just raise some money with some original investors and then start up the company and then hire a project manager who knows what he's doing and has done this before and speaks Spanish and knows how to work with people. And right off the bat, though, Ken Johnson just took everything away. I had no control pretty much right off the bat. He had somehow done that all legally, or I don't even know if it was legal. Actually, we're still looking into it. So that was the biggest issue there, was just I really should have been more, and I got a lot of advice at the time too from people like Doug Casey and my wife, and they all said, no one really ever likes Ken Johnson. I don't think he has any friends on the entire world. That should have been one hint. But he sells himself really well. He's really good at selling himself and saying, everyone's crazy, but I know what I'm doing. And I kind of fell for it. And he's managed to do it with many people, but he's running out of time with all the things he says he's going to do, and he never does.
Yeah, that's what con men do. Their job is really to peddle that snake oil. Like, that's really what it is, the snake oil merchants. But really, a lot of libertarians I've even been seeing have been really somewhat disgruntled by the fact that you guys are using the justice system to reach a resolution with this. And I keep on saying that it's like, as there really isn't a free market for justice right now, so you really don't have any other options out there. What is your thought on those who generally criticize that?
Well, it's interesting because today in Canada, the National Post, which is their main newspaper up there, wrote an article, and they said that that I was using government courts to settle this. And actually, I haven't. I've never actually taken legal action personally. But the investors and the buyers are definitely far along the road in taking legal action. And the thing is, like you said, there is no real way to settle this. If there was no government whatsoever, Ken Johnson would probably just be dead. There's literally hundreds of people who would want to kill him.
That answers the other question I was about to ask.
Yeah. I'm not saying that's the best way to settle business disputes, but he's used all the legal and all this the government status sort of structures to hide himself behind, to the point where the only way that we can actually get him out of there now, in a way that would be that would work in Chile with the government, and they would actually respect the real owners of this company, is to do it legally. There's no other way to do it, especially when you're dealing with somebody like this person who's just not willing in any way, shape, or form to do anything correct. They just want to keep control for themselves no matter what.
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying, but the question that I was going to ask, but you just sort of touched on, how would you prevent this sort of crony capitalism from, in a real, so let's say there's no state whatsoever. How would you prevent this sort of crony capitalism from arising?
That's a good question. I have no idea. We don't really know how the world would work exactly, but I do know it wouldn't have never gone anywhere near this far. Most of the problems so far have all been state-related, so zoning issues. So we have to get permission from the Chilean government to do what we want with land that we own. That's been a major issue. Water rights, all run by the government. And they make it really difficult to transfer those water rights and things like that. So that's been an issue. And then you have a person like the person managing Gulch, who uses every sort of legal contraption. He's sued, I don't even know how many people. He just constantly using government contraptions to go after people, and he'll sue them for copyright or trademark or libel. He's just constantly doing those things. So, if it was a very free market, if there was really no government there, we would own the land. We would obviously have control of it. We'd be there on the land working on it. And if Ken Johnson, sorry, did I cut out again?
I can still hear you, but your picture isn't really moving at all.
Okay. All right. Well, if you can hear me.
Oh, there we go. It cut out again. Ah, lovely, lovely Bright House connection here. All right, but until he comes back, the next thing I was going to talk about was these various secession states that we're seeing sort of coming up. Of course, we have Gulch, as we're talking about right here, and of course we have New Hampshire, and there are various other ones out there, Christiania, Denmark, and just I'm sure there's many more that I'm not even personally aware of. But one thing that I think that many people seem to ignore is the strategy of this whole secession idea. And the way I look at it is I think Alaska and Hawaii would probably be some of the best states to try and really make free states. The reason for this, I have a few reasons for this, but up there is the Dollar Vigilante logo is popping up again, so I'll save this for you. All right, we're back again with Jeff Berwick.
I don't know what the problem is. It might be on my browser, it might be with Google Hangouts, but it's something.
It might be on my end, because I've had trouble for the last few weeks with the internet here. I probably should try and fix that, but
I don't think it's on your end, because I think it's run off the Google servers, but it's something for sure. I don't know what it is, though.
Yeah, well, hopefully one of us will figure it out. But as I was just saying, when you cut out, I was talking about these various secession states that are currently existing throughout the world, and basically, of course, you have Gulch, but you also have New Hampshire, and then there's places like Christiania, Denmark, which are like lesser known and everything, but still all have somewhat anarchistic roots. And one thing that I always wondered was the strategy of the whole thing. I always thought something like Hawaii or Alaska would be a better state to really try and secede with, because it's not geographically connected to the Union. And another thing is, in both of those states, you already have a lot of those anti-government people who live there already. It would be easier to really win over the hearts and the minds of the crowd, if you will. What do you think of that sort of stuff?
Well, I do know people in both Alaska and Hawaii, and they tell me it's not quite as everyone's into freedom as you think. A lot of people in Alaska, they're really tied into these payments they get from the government for, I believe it's oil or something. Hawaii's a whole different story. Yeah, I think there's good and bad parts about every region. But by the way, Gulch was never intended to be a place that was going to be a sovereign free state, you could say. It was never intended. It was just a real estate project in Chile. If over decades it turned out that everyone started believing in freedom and there was no more government, that's fine, but that was not really the plan at all. It was really just a place for people to get out of the U.S. or out of the Western world and live in a place that I think has a lot more opportunity in Latin America, Chile, and live amongst like-minded people in a beautiful place that has a ton of potential. So. But yeah, every place we're going to see in Spain right now with the separatist movement, which is a lot bigger than the Scottish one was. That's going to be interesting. We're seeing it all over the place. There's definitely going to be a lot of drama, change, chaos to some extent over the next few years as a lot of people are starting to wake up and realize they don't want to be owned by people, especially people thousands of miles away who just don't even care about them at all. A local government is always much better than a giant, large government over a huge area. So many people are starting to wake up to that. And if we can get people to wake up to that, it won't be too much harder to get them to realize to make it even more local, make it every city is its own government, then make it some neighborhoods in the city are its own government, and then eventually everyone is just their own government, and that's it. So it's going to be a process.
Exactly, just like work it down from the state all the way down into the individual. I think that's really the best method as well. But at the same time, I think that counter-economics is really a good way of teaching people that they don't need a state either. Like you'd be amazed when I explain agorism to people and how they have all really partaken in this sort of agorist counter-economics. Like they've just the look is very surprising. It's very interesting to explain agorism to someone for the first time.
Yeah, and the internet's changing everything. So you can live a lot freer through things like Bitcoin, through decentralized technologies. This is going to change the world. This is going to be unbelievable over the next few years. People will not believe how much change there's going to be in the next few years, and it could go either way in terms of being really good or really bad. And that's why it's really important to try to get out these messages to people more and more, so that they realize, as their states all collapse, and they will, the U.S. government will collapse. They just can't keep it going much longer. It's a typical empire that's reaching the very end. You just look at all the numbers. That's what I talk about, of course, a lot. Is just the numbers. It's just math. They're not going to be able to do this much longer. Countries and people around the world are moving away from the U.S. dollar, which is their only source of power anymore. Without that, they have almost nothing. So it's going to be very interesting. There's going to be a ton of change. We're starting to see it. Everything's starting to go into hyperdrive. It's just amazing the amount of change and how quickly it happens now. And I think it's mostly because of the internet. People get access to this information in real time, quickly, and it's real information. It's not provided by the government or the mainstream media, who are just a propaganda arm of the government in most countries.
Yeah, I definitely think the internet has definitely done a really good job at evening the playing fields for all sort of philosophical and economic ideas. And it's funny you bring that up too, because like I look back at when I was younger, and it was like I probably would have been, oh, am I a Democrat or a Republican still if it wasn't for the internet? I wouldn't have even known that a lot of these ideas exist. Like, it really has done a great. I think the biggest mistake the state ever could have done was privatize the internet, because it is totally turning against them.
Yeah, Al Gore invented the internet, he said, so it's funny that it's all turned against him now. And it was John Kerry, actually, who just came out last year and said, this internet is making it really hard to govern people. And it's right, and he's right. It totally is. People are getting access to real information for the first time ever on a global basis. So a lot of their propaganda, a lot of their schemes, like what they're doing in Syria right now, are being exposed almost minutes after they come up with them. And people are getting access to this information. So it's going to be amazing to see how this all progresses.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you how the internet has kind of halted the state's progress, too, because, uh-oh, Jeff, we losing you again?
No, I'm just letting my chihuahua in. She's banging.
Typical dog. But damn, what was I about to say? Oh yes. It's interesting to see the states, how we've kind of halted the state's progress, because I forget which exact example this was a few years ago, but someone who either worked at the CIA or the FBI got a memo, and it said how they were going to take out 5 countries in the next 5 years or something like that.
Yeah, it was General Wesley Clark, and it was a few days after 9/11, and he walked into the pentagram, or as they call it, the Pentagon, and they said, we just got the orders, we're going to war. And Wesley Clark, he's on the YouTube, he's brought this up a few times, you can find it. Just look up bomb 7 countries in 5 years, Wesley Clark, and you'll find it. And he said, who are we going to war with? Do we know who did 9/11? And the guy said, no, we don't know. And then Wesley Clark says, where are we going to war? And he said, Iraq. And Wesley Clark said, is there anything tying Saddam Hussein to 9/11? They said, no. But that's just the beginning. After Iraq, it's going to be, and they had a list, it was like Libya, which they've already done, Somalia, Lebanon, Syria, which they're now doing, and there was one more, and then there was Iran, and that was the big one. And they said they're going to do it in 5 years. So your point is that they had this big plan to take over all these countries in 5 years, and now we're 13 years into it, and they've only done 4 of the 7, as far as I know. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya are the big 4 that they've done. In Syria, they're still not even done yet, and it's not a lot of support for what they're doing there right now. So, but they are causing a lot of problems in Syria. So, yeah, they're not able to do the things as quickly or easily as they used to be able to do.
As I was sort of talking about when you got disconnected a few times, I really think that the government right now is really trying to use Iraq as a wedge to get into Syria with ISIS.
Yeah, they're sending troops back to Iraq. But I don't even know why they even left. They obviously never had plans to really.
Why did we even go in the first place? That's the better question.
That started like 20 years ago. It's been literally occupation or war in Iraq for 20 years. For what reason? It's ridiculous. It's the whole military-industrial complex that many people, including Dwight Eisenhower, warned everyone against. I did some calculations, and it's pretty much half of the U.S. government's budget in one way or another goes to the Department of Offense, or as they call it, Department of Defense. And that's a massive amount. And it's just amazing that how many they still have so many Americans brainwashed that we need this giant military, which is bigger than every other military in the world combined almost. And then you have so many guns in the U.S. It was the Japanese emperor, I believe, who said during World War II that he would never attack on the ground in the U.S. There'd be a rifle behind every blade of grass, and that's right. The U.S. doesn't even need a military at all if you want the military for defense, because there's just no chance. It's too many people have self-defense ability in the U.S., and there's a lot of people with guns, and just the amount of hunters in the U.S. alone is the world's largest army. So yeah, it's bizarre. They've really been able to brainwash people to use fear. That was a big part of why they did 9/11, was to get people just into a fear mode where they'll just let them do anything as long as they tell them they're under attack. And that's what they've been doing since 9/11, but it's getting harder and harder because people are starting finally to wake up.
Yeah, I think the thing is really just don't make people realize their own power that they actually possess. And that's really what they try to achieve through these sort of like false flag events. And I have one final thing that I really want to talk about here today. And are you familiar with Storm Cloud's Gathering on YouTube at all?
Yeah, I really like that channel.
Yes, I'm very into his stuff too. But I've seen a few of his interviews, and he lived in Mexico for a while too. And one thing I found out about you when looking into you was you live in Mexico too, and you really make it sound really nice. But his experiences really tell a whole different side of the story of Mexico, much more on the darker side of things. And I think that what it comes down to is anywhere you go, there's going to be those nice areas and those bad areas. There really isn't a set good country or bad country, because locally you're going to have those nicer areas, and you're also going to have those more rough areas, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely areas of Mexico I would not want to hang out in very much. Same in the U.S. I wouldn't want to hang out in the south side of Chicago. 50 people get shot there every weekend, you know, like it's just not a great place to spend time. Yeah, you can find good and bad everywhere. I think in many places in Mexico, it's much better than the U.S. in terms of freedom. You can almost do anything you want. There really is no major police or government presence anywhere, and people just sort of handle things themselves. It's very anarchic, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm in Acapulco, and that's why I'm going to have Anarcho-Capitalism, so people can come down and kind of see the lifestyle. It's just night and day compared to the U.S. today in terms of just general freedom. You just have no problems here. You can smoke anywhere, you can drink anywhere, unless the establishment itself doesn't want you to, and there is a few that don't, and that's fine. It's their private property. But there actually is a law. You're not supposed to smoke in clubs. But they just don't care. No one cares what the government says down here. They just do whatever they feel is right, and just you know, it's a very free lifestyle. So yeah, it all depends. I personally, I just love Acapulco. It's, to me, the freest place in North America by far. The culture's great. People are great. They're amazing. They're so nice, and it's very laid back. And yeah, there's some problems caused all by the government and the war on drugs, which is now ending, which is great, and now it's going to change. That's a big change in the world in the next few years, and that will great. You know, Mexico in general is doing very well. The Mexican stock market's up about 400% in the last 10 years. There's barely a day goes by I don't see a major company moving to Mexico. Large auto manufacturers, a lot of them are moving up north of Mexico City to a place called, I don't know how to pronounce it, Querétaro, and yeah, there's just a lot of opportunities here. A lot of the economy is doing very well. There's actually more Mexicans leaving the U.S. to go to Mexico now than vice versa. And I've talked to many of them, and I say, so why'd you come back to Mexico? And they say for two reasons. Number one, the economy in the U.S. is really bad. There's not much opportunity, thanks to all the taxes, regulations, money printing, all that sort of thing. And secondly, they say it's just not very free. You can't really do anything. We're always in fear of someone, you know, pulling up behind us with red and blue lights, and next thing you know, you're beat up or you're you're kidnapped for nothing in many places. So yeah, it's a different place. It's not for everybody down here, but I like it a lot better. I much prefer to spend time in Mexico than the U.S.
You know, it's funny you bring up the stock market too, because it really looks like that it's really at that point where it's about to drop majorly. I mean, you have the minimum wage, which is being hiked a lot, which is in a lot of cities, which is clearly creating a bubble, and a lot of the stocks are reaching all-time highs. It seems like we're right at the point right before the Great Depression happened.
Well, we're actually in the Great Depression right now. Unemployment at the moment, if you calculate it properly, it's around 23%. They just learned how to take all the unemployment out of the unemployment numbers. The same with the inflation numbers, CPI. They say that's inflation. Actual true inflation is north of 7%, 7 to 10%. They say 2%. That's a big difference. So yeah, they're printing a lot of money. That's why we're on QE to infinity. They're not going to stop. They can't stop, because if they do stop, the entire system collapses, the entire U.S. government collapses, and it's over. And they want to just drag it on as long as they can, so they're just going to keep printing money. So that's my only sort of reason why I think it's possible that we don't see a major stock market collapse, because they're just printing so much money that if there is even let's say the Dow goes down 1,000 points tomorrow, Janet Yellen will come out of her boardroom and say, we're going to print more money, and then it'll just go back up again. But of course, it's not really going up. What's going on is going up nominally, but not in real terms.
Well, it's creating that bubble again.
Right, and that's all they've been doing since effectively 2001.
Alrighty. Well, Jeff, I'm unfortunately now reaching the end of my time, but do you have anything you want to close on?
Nope, I'm here for you, so it's nice talking to you.
Nice talking. Oh, yeah, there's one final question that I thought I would ask in the spirit of Galt's Gulch. Aside from John Galt, who is your favorite character in Atlas Shrugged?
You know, I never fully read the book. I always said that, by the way. The whole reason that I really named it Galts Chile was because I knew what the concept of the book was, and I knew that the world today is very similar to the book in Atlas Shrugged, in that it was getting oppressive, too much taxation, too much regulation, and a lot of people just wanted to shrug out and get away from it all. So in that terms, I thought the name Galts Gulch was perfect for what we were trying to do. But I even tried to watch the movies, and they were so bad, I just couldn't sit through. It was really embarrassing. It's too bad. I don't know if they did that on purpose or not. But
trust me, as a fan of the book, I'm just sitting here like, oh, God, I just hit reboot already. Just go back and start all over again. Like, get someone who actually knows what they're doing, not from the Ayn Rand Institute or the Atlas Society, whichever one of those objectivist groups that hate libertarians was making those things. Alrighty then. Well, I'm reaching the end of my time, so for any of you who are not familiar with Jeff here, go check out his website, thedollarvigilante.com. I hope I got that right.
That's right.
And also his podcast, Anarcho-Capitalism, which is pretty kick-ass. Go check out my Facebook page, The Adorkable Anarchist World, and also go check out the VVN Facebook page, of course, where I post things almost daily. And, yeah, without further ado, this is Mitchell Wiechek of The Adorkable Anarchist World, trying to remain optimistic in the age of imperialism.
Peace.
I will never defend a man who makes amends to the enemy's friends. I will never pretend.